Where have all the white people gone? This was the question on the right-wing's lips ever since Tory grandee Robert Jenrick declared that on a visit to a Birmingham town he didn't see a single white face. We covered his comments on the show on Tuesday, but in summary, Jenrick had travelled to the Birmingham town of Handsworth to do one of his trademark videos opining about his petty annoyances and about the state of the nation. This one in particular, however, was a video for GB News as part of their Stop Trashing Britain campaign, which Birmingham has been notorious for, given the long-running industrial dispute between refuse workers and the council. The clip was resurfaced 8 months later after a leaked audio of Jenrick was released, where he claimed in his time in Handsworth he didn't see a single white face, sparking a nationwide debate about what integration looks like and whether or not Jenrick's comments were even reflective of the state of Handsworth at the time. Well, on that note, the keen eyes at the local Birmingham Dispatch had been scouring the original video in question, and it seems to directly contradict Jenrick's comments. The first clip appears to show white people on camera in both the foreground and the background, and the second clip shows two people walking behind Jenrick as he does a piece to camera. Their faces are blurred there, as you can see, but the infallible technology at GB News allows us to see one of them for a split second. Birmingham Dispatch screenshotted that moment to make it clear. Well, I will leave it up to them to describe what you're seeing there. The Dispatch did some geolocating, i.e. we went to Handsworth and used our eyes to ascertain that this portion was filmed at the corner of the Broadway and Maidstone Road. And who is that behind Jenrick as he stands on the junction? A woman who seems to be, without getting too race sciencey, white. So, is Jenrick blind, lying, or just stupid? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that at home. What I will say, however, is if you go to the comments on the original video, all you will see is a deluge of Islamophobia. Comments around importing slums and inferior cultures, Muslims not having respect for the United Kingdom, etc., etc. So people like Jenrick have an incentive to imply that there couldn't be any white people in the area to be blamed for littering and fly tipping, allowing racist narratives like this to fester. This is despite the fact that the reality is that areas like this have been vandalised by austerity for 15 years and, of course, deindustrialisation for 46 years. Rishi Sunak literally bragged about diverting money away from poorer urban constituencies like Handsworth and towards places like the much richer in the Royal Tunbridge Wells, I believe that clip was filmed. But admitting fault in Whitehall, especially for committed Austerians like Jenrick, would be unthinkable. Much easier to blame and scapegoat minorities instead. Dahlia, of course, all of Robert Jenrick's seeming inability to look at the actual footage that he filmed there is quite funny. But the reality of what this actually is a lot darker given the response to his comments and the response to the individual and the response to the video in question. What's your thoughts?
I don't know what to say, because what we have here is a de facto leader. I know Kemi Badenoch is technically the leader of the Conservative Party, but in terms of public status, it feels like Robert Jenrick has seen, he seems to have a lot more airtime of, one of the biggest the second biggest party in this country, is essentially equating the presence of Black and brown faces with moral and civilization decline. I mean, it's old, like really old school racism. And it's being articulated with very little pushback. It's become normal to basically see a place that is maybe got more than 50% of Black and brown people in it, and to say that this is a place of civilizational decline, and to associate white faces, regardless of who those white faces are. I mean, you don't even know if they they could be European, they might not even be British. But to just to equate white faces with safety, goodness, cleanliness, development. I mean, it's old school colonial racism. And I think that it's also I also find this whole language of Britain being invaded and taken over by people, foreigners who have no respect for the way things are, no respect for the culture. And the thing is with racism is that so often racism is a projection, and it is a case of every accusation being a confession. Because ultimately people like Robert Jenrick are scared that migrants will do to Britain what Britain did to the world, what Britain did to their countries. Because if we're talking about a country being invaded by a foreign entity, and that foreign entity not only invading the country, but subordinating that country to their economic, cultural, and political vision of the world, and essentially taking over the governance of that country. That's happened. The only place where that has really actually happened is the British Empire. And I think there's this sense of like, if we give them too much freedom, they might do to us what we did to them. Because if we were in their position, that's what we would do. And that's what I find so ironic about the way in which this kind of great replacement theory, this explicitly racist turn in the right, that is what it's giving. It's giving every accusation is a confession. What I would say is that the reason that we are seeing this kind of surfacing of this very explicitly racist politics is grounded in the fact that Britain exists within a contradiction. And that contradiction is that from its inception, Britain has always been a place that has extracted from the other. It has required the other. It has been dependent upon the other. It's been dependent on the labor of the other. It's been dependent on the resources of the other. It has been dependent on those that do not just live within the islands that we call Britain, or those that do not just have generations of families within the island of Britain. And it resents that. It resents that dependence. It wishes that it was not dependent on that its development was not dependent on people that it sees as lesser than. But unfortunately, it is. And so what's the end point of this? The end point is not actually to get rid of all migrants or to get rid of people who have migration in their heritage, because Britain would not function without it. And they all know that. They all know, if we're talking about seeing white faces, it's been a hot minute since I've seen a white face doing low wage, awful labor to keep our cities going. It's been a hot minute since I've seen a white face cleaning an office block late at night, And so it relies on that labor, not just of racialized people within this country, but racialized people all throughout the world. And so what it wants is it wants to create a system where, yes, racialized people continue to exist in this country, but they exist as second-class citizens. They don't have access to civic rights in the way that white British people do. And that is the dynamic that they're trying to create. It's not to kick all the foreigners out or the descendants of foreigners. They can't do that, and they don't want to, because ultimately we do the work that they don't want to do, or that there are too many labor shortages that they couldn't fill without us. But they want us to be here and to knowingly be here in a state of second-class citizenship. They don't want us to have the kind of representation culturally, politically, whatever, that is commensurate with our contribution to the country. And that is why we are seeing this both state and street level resurgence of racism. It's to discipline our presence in this country so that we know our place. You'll be here, you'll clean the asses of our elderly parents, you'll drive our buses, you'll do our night shifts, you'll do the brutal work that keeps this country going, but you'll shut up while you do it. That's the ultimate political and social goal.
We had a discussion on the show yesterday around the creeping kind of spectre of fascism in this country. And one of the kind of central ideas of the kind of nationalism, the ultra-nationalism of fascism, was that there was an internal other that was ruining the kind of the body of the people and of the nation state from within. And this rhetoric around people importing inferior cultures, the rhetoric that we're seeing about invasions of migrants, this idea, again, that the country was fine until it was ruined by diversity. Again, this area of the country, Handsworth, has been diverse both in terms of religion and ethnicity for much longer than people have had these kind of mass immigration concerns that they would call it for such a while. And again, it's scary to me that these kinds of rhetoric are being normalized. And that's why I think the Jenrick is a genuinely very worrisome individual as a politician. And I stream quite often with one of my good friends, Kevin Logan, one of the old school anti-SJW YouTubers. And he's from Birmingham and grew up playing football with the people from Handsworth. And all of the different people of all of his different backgrounds, and listen to him talk about his experiences and the kind of people they grew up with and the way in which these people have been demonized, being treated as a microcosm of everything wrong with Britain. It really rubs me up the wrong way. And I think it's very sad that this is the point that discourse has come to in this country.